It's because I'm what you are. I'm a teacher. I work in a public school system, not in the English language classroom, but educating, or as I like to say, enabling the development of English language teachers. Am I getting too much feedback? Is it okay? So the first thing I have to do is I have to profusely thank APPI for bringing me here. This is my first time in Portugal. In 4 days, I have tried and seen as much of this beautiful country as possible. But more importantly, I want to thank you guys for making me feel so welcome. I mean, there are no barriers, there's no ocean in between us. These 3 days have been just amazing in terms of meeting new friends, exchanging ideas. I learned a lot from talking to you guys, so thank you very much. You were my professional development for the year, right? I only hope my university will take credit for it. Anyway, if we could have my presentation. Guys are talking there. I call this presentation, hello, pode trocar a... Obrigado. Eu falo pouquinho de português. Português do Brasil, do sul do Brasil. Okay, I'm calling this presentation Fulfilling Our Students' Needs, 1E at a time. And you know how I'm going to start this presentation? By making a confession. The first confession I'm going to make is that I'm angry. And I'm very, very angry. I'm angry because we teachers are never recognized. And if anything goes wrong with our students' learning, we are the ones to blame. Kids don't learn because teachers don't know how to teach. Have you heard that? And when I see the student teachers that we receive, who are so invested in making their students' lives better, it really pains you to see how they are being treated. And what concerns me is that, did you know that we lose almost 50% of our colleagues during the first 5 years of practice? A lot of talent that goes to work, mostly in my neck of the woods, in call centers, because they have good English. But we've lost talent. And as I said, I took the chance to go around Portugal and see a few things. And when they tell me teachers are the problem, my response is no. Teachers are the solution. If you don't believe me, look at what we did in the pandemic. We made magic from nothing, right? So, when I see the investment of these young people, I think of, there was a musical a few years ago in the States. It was about gay rights, but the title is Love, Labor, Compassion. This is what I want, well, one of the things that I want for our profession, right? Because many of my students go by something like this every day. Hoje vives ou sobrevives? How many classes do you teach? How many students' lives do you affect? And then they come with all these expectations and this idea that they're going to be the greatest teacher in the world, right? That they are going to make a true difference, and they invest and they do wonderful stuff in the classroom. Yet, when it comes to them being appreciated for the work, nothing. I don't know if there are any principals in the room. If there are, I'm sorry for what I'm going to say, but many principals say, oh, he or she is a young teacher, as if being young was a sin. So sometimes I truly believe that we need a miracle. We need a miracle to help our profession move forward, because you know what? Due to this loss, constant weeding out of our future of the profession, we are losing very valuable opportunities to do what we have been hired to do, which is make our students' lives better. We do it through a foreign language or a series of foreign languages. Others do it through maths, but of course the mathematics teachers are the mathematics teachers. So what do you teach? English? English, yeah. Right? It's like, or French or Italian. So, in our time together, I would like to touch upon a few things, right? I would like to to show you a view from a real classroom. What we've done is, in one of my research projects, we were with certain materials, and we recorded students, Uruguayan students, in public schools. They are between A1 and A2 level, and we recorded them doing a task. Then we applied a framework that I'm going to show you today, and then I'm going to show you the effect of the framework in the students' production, right? After that, I'm going to advocate for a multimodal approach to second language pedagogy. And here I'm taking you away from multimodality as we have looked at it in the last 2 days to think about our practices. Because we talk about multimodality, but about the language, we never talk about multimodality about our practice. So we're going to take a little stroll down some influential thoughts that come from the field of English as an international language, because we neither teach British nor American English. We teach English as an international language, right? A little bit from cognitive science, because neuroscience and cognitive science have made a lot of advances in the past 20 years or so. We're going to look at a view from educational research and from second language acquisition theory. In order to do what? To go back to what matters to us, which is the students' communicative needs. And if you take anything from this presentation today, I want you to take this with you. This is the only thing that matters. What the students need. And what we have to do in the classroom is simply listen carefully to what they need and respond to that, not to what the plan tells us or the curriculum or the ministry or the course book, to what the students say. And believe me, if we do that, there is possibility for change. And newcomers to our profession can have something concrete that they can use, not just to sobreviver, but to fully live our profession. And then I'm going to give you some takeaways. Does this sound like a plan? Yeah? This part is not going to be very interactive. But then in the workshop, we're going to go deeper into some of the here we're going to have concrete classroom practices. But then we're going to go into like a repertoire of other practices in the workshop. So let's get started with a view from the real classroom. I'm going to show you the transcript of a task. This was the task that we set students. I'll give you a minute to read it. Unashamedly plugging in, this comes from a book I wrote in 2020 with Express Publishing. It's called Topics into Task. And what I did was, given topics that are very frequent in course books, I designed sequences of tasks from A1 to C1 to C2, right? So this comes from the unit on food. It's at A2 level. And as you can see, basically, this is oriented towards teenagers and young adults. You are organizing a party, but we know everybody nowadays is either allergic to something or has a determined certain eating style, to put it somehow. So the task was, okay, you have all your friends coming to a party, plan the menu, okay? Do you know what the task is? The only requirement was there had to be 2 appetizers 2 entrees, and 2 desserts, so that everybody could be happy. We tried it with 1 when we piloted the task in the classroom, and it took forever because just 1. Are you ready to see how my students did it? Warning, there's Spanish there, right? And as you read what my students did, just think, is this similar to what happens in my classroom? Do you need translation? Good. My Greek friends, my friends from Poland, do you need translation? Yes? Okay. Basically, these are a small group of 4 students, and one goes, okay, Anita, aperitif. In Spanish, we say aperitivo. Aperitif, salad and cheese. Now, Peter, the same. Ahora, Peter, lo mismo. Right? Pero vamos de a uno. Decirlo de vuelta que yo voy anotando. But let's go one by one. You say, and I write down. Anita, aperitif, salad and cheese. Peter, entree, cream potato and beans with salad and cheese and beans with sauce. Dessert, ice cream and yogurt. Yogurt. And then she goes like, what is it? Like, ooh, it looks too Spanish, right? It must be said in another way. Peter, aperitif, French fries. Just forget about it, right? The entree, quinoa burger and stuffed zucchini. Chocolate and yogurt with strawberries. Aperitif, Priscilla, carrot and potatoes. And entree, what does it say? Does it say noodles? Noodles with sauce and salad. Fruit. How do you say it? And she laughs. Fruit. Write it down. Fruit. Right? Phoebe, aperitif, vegetables and garlic bread. Entree, stuffed potatoes, corn patties. And then they go dessert, orange and blueberry. For Bruce, aperitif, onion and fish. Disgusting. Entree, fish with egg and fried vegetables. We're done. This must have taken 5 minutes of literal negotiation, interaction. But as you can see, let's say almost 50% of the task was not done in English. So we said, okay, how do we solve this? Well, let's give them a good model, right? And let's teach them the language that they should be using. We went to our new best friend, which is, thank you very much. And we asked them to do the following. We put the task and we told ChatGPT, imagine you are a language learner at A1/A2 level who has been asked to do this task with a friend. Can you write a dialogue that is authentic? And then we took this and we did what I'm going to show you how to do. Awareness raising, noticing, looking at, marking what aspects of language, and then registering it. And after this sequence, we asked them to present. Remember, this was over the course of a week, 4 45-minute periods. And this is what happened in the last class, their presentations. This is a literal transcript of what that group came up with. Hello, everybody. We make a menu for all people. Our menu have food for eaters different. For aperitif, we have salad and cheese. Also, we have French fries and carrots and potatoes. For entree, we have cream potato with beans, salad and cheese. Also, quinoa burger with stuffed zucchini and noodles with sauce and salad. For dessert, we have ice cream and yogurt and chocolate with strawberries. Thank you. We hope you like our menu. How about that? Yeah, it's A1, A2. We cannot expect full accuracy. But I don't know if you can notice the difference between the first attempt, the final attempt, how both accuracy and fluency have contributed to bringing together a cohesive and coherent discourse entirely in English. And of course, they had a pre-task where all the names of these foods were learned, reviewed, practiced, right? But when we saw this result, this gave us hope. So we started digging into how did we come to this? What did we take this from? Where did we take this from? Why does this work? And why don't other things work? And here is where we are going to talk a little bit about this multimodal approach to pedagogy. When we talk about multimodality, basically we refer to, come on people, you have had like 100 presentations on multimodality. What do we talk about? We talk about multiple representations through different semiotic systems, right? Now, when we're looking at teaching pedagogy, we may be thinking, well, but is this multimodality? If you are borrowing something from cognitive science and you are borrowing something from second language acquisition and from general educational research, isn't that an interdisciplinary endeavor? Which is another big word in education. I make a difference between interdisciplinarity and multimodality. Very quickly, and you're going to read it, I'm not going to read it. I have a definition of interdisciplinarity. I have the purpose of interdisciplinarity. And don't worry taking space in your cell phones, because I have a QR code and you will be able to take the whole presentation with you. Okay? Sorry, I forgot to say that. And let me give you an example. A project that combines history, literature, and art to explore the cultural impact of the Revolução dos Cravos. Right? That is interdisciplinary. Now, multimodality is a different thing. It refers to using multiple modes or channels of communication. And look at this, it's not just communication, it's also representation in learning. The purpose there is to engage different senses and learning preferences or needs, making content more accessible and effective. An example, a science lesson that includes a video explanation, a diagram, hands-on experiments, and group discussion, right? But this is too scientific. Let's go to the day-to-day thing. Here we have a refeição combinada in Campo Pequeno, where you have some beef, some chicken, some chorizo, fries, and rice. And there you have a francesinha, which is my new vice, right? Yeah. And you also have chorizo there, and you have fries. So if we are going to make an analogy, we would say that interdisciplinarity, is the what. So basically you are creating a fusion dish. We have here the beef, the pork, the meat, the chorizo, the pineapple, different ingredients. So it's the what. But multimodality is the how. How do we make it edible? How do we make it palatable? How do we make it in a way that everybody can digest it? Right? So, bearing that in mind, I would say that our multimodal approach should start with something very simple, which is what we do every day, and looking at it with a magnifying glass, and looking at what works and what doesn't work. Because, let's be honest, can you raise your left hand, please? And now take your right hand, put it on your heart, And tell me honestly, don't you sometimes do things that you know don't work, either because you are told you have to do them or because they are in the book, right? Okay, so I'm calling for a little silent underground revolution. Look at what works and stick to that. I know, I mean, if you're saying, you may be thinking, yeah, but a young teacher, well, a young teacher comes to this endeavor with a lot of hope and ideals, and boom, faces a brick wall. And what they do is they develop their own little pedagogy, if you want, things that with which they are safe, things that work. So help them extend and asking them to do, take one of the things that works and make sure it works, and take one of the things that don't work and just make one change. Just one change. For example, I had a student who had a lot of problems. She was very, very shy, very, very petite, right? She was teaching a group of adolescents who were my size, right? So she barricaded herself against the board and behind the desk, right? So, and we wanted to see a difference. I said, like, I cannot say her name, but I have to say, we have to do something different. And we brainstormed in our didactics class, and somebody came up with, teach the class from the back, not from the front. That very simple thing changed the class dynamics, right? So start with classroom practices. Remember, we're talking about the how, right? But also, we know that a lot has been learned in the past few years about how our brain processes learning through neuroscience and cognitive science. Also, the field of English as an international language has given us limitless possibilities to innovate. And, of course, classroom-based research. Things that we teachers research with our colleagues and students. And let's be honest, we are the true proprietors of what happens in the classroom. When we have a university researcher, and I've been in that role, mea culpa, I take the syllabus and then beat myself up, right? Rules of the game. I walk into an environment that is not mine, and I analyze or study people with whom I have no real connection or real connection, right? And if you've ever observed colleagues' classes, many times you go and give them a piece of advice and they say, no, but I wouldn't be able to do that here because, and there's always an underlying reason which is very valid. So all these things can help us build a multimodal approach to pedagogy without forgetting that we are part of a science, which is second language acquisition theory, that studies the processes that we go through in order to acquire a language. So very quickly, before we go into the practical side, let's take a look at each of these. I promise it's 2 slides per thing. Let's start with the view from English as an international language. I'm part of a cadre of speakers, researchers, writers that want to have one of our feet firmly placed in theory and the other one firmly placed in practice so that we can theorize practice and practice theory. And this is how we teach. Also, we stay away from research which is done in countries whose contexts are completely different from ours. Why do I have to teach PPP, TBL, or CLIL in Uruguay in the same way that it's taught in the UK, where you have multilingual classes of very privileged kids, or you have multilingual public schools, state schools, that have 150 other languages, where English is a need. If you want to survive in those environments, you have to speak English, right? My students go from English class into Historia. And then sometimes they go from Educación Física to English, and they are crazy. And when you ask them, like, but you know, English is good for you. Guy Cook says that one of the biggest problems that we have is that we teach English for tomorrow. and students want English for today. Guys, the world has changed significantly. We have the polyglots. This year, when we had our admissions exam for the College of Education, my campus is very small. We generally have like 20 people who have to sit for an entrance exam because they don't hold a physical paper, right? And of those 20, we had 7 who confessed they never attended a single English lesson in their lives, except for the ones in high school. How did you learn? By getting immersed online, by doing Duolingo, by doing apps and talking to other people. Of course, the writing is appalling, but you listen to them and they sound almost perfect in terms of intelligibility, right? And they are so creative. I mean, it's mind-blowing what they can do in the classroom. So, this group of researchers and colleagues and I are part of a movement that is looking to decenter ELT, to reclaim our inherent right to teach English in a way that is fair, is just, socially just, and effective for our students. Yes, we get information from a lot of sources, but the most important thing is that we respond to our context, right? It does away with a Eurocentric or North-centric view that there is one pedagogy for teaching languages. And that pedagogy comes from a certain institution that offers qualifications. And those institutions have kind of shrunk the reach of our profession and our possibility to know about things. So we're looking to do that, to decenter ELT, to take ELT to where it is needed and in the way in which it is needed. From cognitive science, very interesting things, but you know what? I've been in this profession, this is my 43rd year. 43rd year, no, 43rd or 42nd? 42nd. 32nd year as a teacher educator. And when I read an article from the 1st of April, 2025, I'm not talking about last year, I'm talking about not even a month ago, this is what I learned. That curiosity supports learning. Did you know that? Secondly, that we process verbal information better when paired with visual information. Also, that we only learn what we think about. Basically, we perceive, then we encode it, and we consolidate it. I like to say we notice something, we mark it, and we register it. And we must repeat and return to new learning to make it stick. That last one is a little reminder that we have lost, along the way of development of the profession, some valuable practical tools. This view from cognitive science has some implications for teaching. Like, for example, you have to unleash curiosity. But the difference is not like what makes people curious, but how do we make people curious? There's something called a cognitive interest cues that comes from research. And basically, there are internal or external. The internal, we have to get the students to kind of produce, like, for example, become interested by showing them an interesting image or playing a song or something that tickles their curiosity about. But the external are the ones that we create when we plan. And if we have as our north and horizon what the book says we have to teach, or what the curriculum says we have to teach, and not what the students actually are telling us, teacher, this is what I need, then you know what happens? These interest cues are the ones that determine how much attention we can pay. If we don't have those interest cues, no attention. And I'm going to show you how to do it, right? Because it's not rocket science. Secondly, hey, great discovery. Make learning multimodal, or at least visual, verbal, and oral. Duh, we teach a language. Thirdly, engage students in thinking about their learning with high-level questions. Remember Bloom? And you know you have to Maslow before you bloom, right? Now, honestly, again, raise your left hand, right hand on your heart. How many high-level questions do you ask in the classroom? Not many. Because what we respond to is the language level of the students, not their level of learning, right? So we're going to see how we can create high-level, engaging activities to get the students to do things. And then I'm slowly bringing this issue of practice, right? If you attended or watched the plenaries in ISCTE this year, we had a neuroscientist who talked about the importance of repetition. And she just talked about repetition as a way of reinforcing synapses among neurons. I don't see it as repetition, but more as practice, of getting your hands dirty with the language. So, how about the view from educational research? Did you know that there is a way in which we can know whether a teaching activity is effective or not? Did you know? Have you ever heard of Hattie's effect size? Okay, what is the effect size? Why does it matter, and where does it come from? This is huge scientific research. An effect size is basically defined, it's a statistical measure, right? There's math in it, it has to be good, right? So, it tells us how much of an impact something that we do in the classroom for our student has on their learning, right? And there are ways, very scientific ways of doing it. It matters because not all teaching strategies are equally effective. There are some that have the greatest impact on learning, and thus we should prioritize them. But also this tells us what of the things that we do not work. So it tells us what to stop doing. And last, this is very fine, but any intervention, any teaching should have an average effect size of 0.40, right? From 0.0 to 0.40, that is average. That is normal. But what Hattie and his team did is they looked at the work of over 300 million students. So we're not talking about small research. We're talking about huge numbers. And more than 1,600 meta-analysis of those data. And they used a formula for effect size to find out what actually works. Just to give you an inkling into this, and you can follow it up if you want, right? Basically, what they use is what we call in statistical studies in education Cohen's d, which basically takes an experimental group and a control group. To the experimental group, you give an intervention, not to the control group. So you evaluate them, and you see what the mean score in the experimental group is, and what the mean score in the control group is. And then you deduct them, and you divide them by the pooled standard deviation. So that is a very complex square root formula. But basically, you get a number from 0 to 2. And to interpret it, this is the scale. If we have something like 0.0 to 0.2, well, that has a small effect. And it's basically a few months of growth, equivalent to a few months of growth. 0.4, which is like the cut number there, moderate impact is what we would expect in a year. But anything above 0.6 plus means that that is extremely effective in promoting learning. Why do I bring this about? Because after we discuss the view from language acquisition, I'm going to show you the strategies, and you're going to guess the effect size according to your perspective, and then I'm going to give it to you, okay? Second language acquisition. Question: what is acquisition? When you think of acquisition, what are the first words that come to your mind? Pardon me? Ability to use or understand? Do you believe in the difference between learning and acquisition? Yes? Do you remember Krashen? He's still around. Remember that he created 5 hypotheses for language learning, right? And that is what they still are, hypotheses which are not theses. And actually, only one of those hypotheses has been confirmed, which is the natural order hypothesis. Language progresses according to a certain inner grammatical syllabus, right? All the other have been disproved. So what we talk about nowadays is instructed second language acquisition, because let's be honest, we work in an artificial situation, right? When we learn in real life, we're surrounded by stimuli, we have the chance to ask questions if we need to, we get mediation from others. In the classroom, there are discipline issues, there are discipline rules, we are sort of pulled up in a classroom. We cannot stand up when we want. So that is an artificial situation. And we're trying, we language teachers, to promote a natural process. So what we do is not promote a natural process. We just accelerate it. Very quickly, this is one of the beautiful peacocks that we saw in Castello di São Jorge yesterday, right? And if you look at the peacock, first of all, it's not indigenous to Portugal. It comes from India. But also, it's pretty much like second language acquisition. You say second language acquisition and you imagine the tail, right, in all its glory. But then you start looking at the different shades, the different colors, the different patterns. And although it's a beautiful view, it's not that clear, right? We say that acquisition, and I love this definition from Henshaw and Hawkins, who are 2 Spanish teachers in the States. Acquisition is the mostly implicit, not subconscious, implicit knowledge, a process of building a linguistic system by making what? Form-meaning connections. But to make the form-meaning connection, you have to have the meaning. So I like the metaphor they give. Acquisition is what happens to you while you are busy understanding messages. Isn't that beautiful, right? And that, if we go back to post-method pedagogy, Kumara developed back in the 90s when he said, forget about the methods. Nobody uses a method, right? He gave us a post-method pedagogy that is sustained by 3 pillars, 3 parameters. The parameter of particularity, so I have to teach in a way that the people I have here today, in this time and space, learn. Not according to what the theoreticians say I have to do. The second parameter is that of practicality. It's not just thinking about how people learn or acquire languages. Do something about it. And try it out. And change one. And find what works. Oh, sorry. And the parameter of possibility. That has to do with power and dominance. Now, we are naturally subversive. Don't tell anybody, right? Because we know, I mean, the ministry gives us guidelines, but when we're in the classroom, we do what we know works, right? And then, of course, if you have supervisors like we do in Uruguay, the day they come, you do whatever you are told to do. But that doesn't work because the kids say, hey, teacher, why are you teaching differently today? Just because this woman came to the classroom? Yeah, been there, done that. So, what is communication? We want them to acquire language so they can communicate. Now, communication has three important dimensions that are not always taken into consideration. And think about your students who have special educational needs. And when you say, oh, they cannot communicate, maybe because they are not verbal, in a multimodal world, does that premise still hold true? I don't think so, because communication is, first of all, the expression. Yeah, I agree with you, the expression, but it's also the interpretation, and it's also the negotiation of what? Of meaning, but not for meaning's sake, with a purpose, right? And when we change the focus from the method, the curriculum, the prescription, to the students' actual learning needs, we're giving them a purpose to communicate. You know what the purpose is? The one they want, basically to learn about themselves and the world around them. Now, if this purpose is not sustained or implemented, then you don't do communication, you do language practice. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't say I teach in a communicative way and then I feed the language they have to use in drills, right? So, the view from students' communicative needs. I thought for a long time about this, and during the pandemic in particular, we had an opportunity to literally record our lessons because we were on Zoom, and to nitpick and look inside the student's head. It was a wonderful thing. So with my student teachers, we started thinking about how do we put this into a framework that is user-friendly, right? Why a framework? Basically because of 4 reasons. The framework gives us flexibility. It's not a straitjacket. It's not a method. It gives us parameters, okay? And we can move within those parameters. Secondly, it provides a comprehensive approach because it brings theory and practice together. It also, integrates theory and practice, but also when we know that our professional development as teachers depends mostly on this, our own pocket, and many institutions do not invest in our professional development, having a framework and trying to use it and think about it, what works, what doesn't, is a form of professional development. And talking about what we do in the classroom is a form of professional development. So this framework has to work. It has to work for 2 people, for the teacher, but also for the students. And the framework is built around 6 particular needs that students have, and they are the ones I'm going to show you how we do it, right? The metaphor that we use is that of a weather vane, right? Where each of the needs is moved according to the wind of the learner, right? So we get something like this. 6 E's, hence the title of the presentation. Let's start with the first one, exploring. What do students need when we say exploring? Well, they need to know what to learn. How many times do you tell your students what to learn? Why to learn it? How to learn it? What we will teach them, why we will teach them, and how we will teach them. This has to do with teacher clarity, of being explicit, right? And remember we talk about Hattie's effect size. Do you think that being clear has a high, medium, or low effect size? The teacher clarity, the teacher being clear about these things. What do you think? How many of you think it's low? Medium or average? More or less? High? Okay, here you have it. Remember, the cutoff number was 0.40. It's almost twice the means. So teacher clarity is good. What implications does it have? Well, basically, we need to capture our students' interest. We know that. Now we need to find ways in this time and age to be able to do that. Orient students toward the lesson, show them explicitly, hey, you guys, you're learning this because when we talk about this topic, you will need to do this, right? Don't just say, oh, that's from next year, right? Providing opportunities for reflection, do a clear orientation. I'm going to show you in the workshop a very practical way of doing this that requires no preparation whatsoever. We also need to engage the students. We have just seen it, okay? They need to become aware of what they already know. How many times do you make students aware of what they already know? They need to become aware of how what they know can help them learn new things. And activate their background knowledge. Again, this is about background knowledge. Effect size, low, moderate, high, what do you think? High? You're going to be surprised. 1.28. And this is not just about what do you know about the topic. It's about, have you ever done an activity like this? Were you successful in it? Yes, why? Can anybody share a tip for the others? So this is activating the whole of the background knowledge, not just the content of the lesson. What are the implications? Well, novelty is always good, but remember that because a lesson is fun, it doesn't mean that it produces learning, right? Present meaningful and relevant challenges, encourage critical thinking and curiosity, explore background knowledge through interactive activities. Now, what students come to us for is to be able to speak a language, and that is what they want to do, express. If you ask them to write something, that's not expression to them. That is a waste of time, right? But they like to talk. Now, what do students need when they say we want to express ourselves? We know they need exposure to samples of authentic language. Not artificial language, but authentic language. We know that they need a reason to engage in communication and a purpose to communicate. We lost in our profession somebody this year, last year, sorry. I don't know if you know his name, N.S. Prabhu. He was an Indian professor, and he was the one who started the task-based learning movement through the Bangalore project. You know the year? 1980. Prabhu died, but he left us a very rich legacy. And he says that if you want to create a purpose for communication, make sure that students have to cover at least one of three kinds of gaps. Either an information gap, a reasoning gap, or an opinion gap. But most importantly, help them prepare for expression. How many times do we tell the students, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to prepare how you're going to say this? No, we move from the reading to the activity that says, talk to a partner, what's your opinion about the reading? Right? So, when we talk about students being invested, look at that. We need to create the conditions for them to get invested with the with everything, the topic, but also the lesson. What are the implications? The gaps. And we came up with these questions to check whether what we're doing is truly communicative or not. Do students have access to input? Right? That is the first question. It has to be answered yes. The second question is, what are they doing with the input? Let me give you an example. You have an activity that says, follow the example. Chores, household chores. Do you do the washing every day? Yes, I do it every day. Now ask and answer with a partner, and you have take out the bins, do the dishes, do the shopping, and it's like, do you do the shopping every day? Yes, I do it every day. Is that something that they are doing with the input, or is that grammatical gymnastics? Yet, we can turn this around and say, like, make a list of 5 household chores that you like to do individually, right? Then join with a partner and share and try to see if you would make good roommates. Which of the two do you think the students are going to love doing? The second one. Well, encounter. Here's the big thing. When do we explicitly teach the language, right? The thing is, our students have background knowledge, but it's disorganized. We are the experts, and we know how it should be organized. So our first task is to organize it for them, right? So we have to provide them support in multiple ways, and here is where multimodality also comes into the equation, okay? Students do not learn only from us or the book. They have memories, they have experiences, they have self-resource. They learn also through scaffolding, what we do, the lessons that we plan and the interventions we make. But they work together to work things out with peers at the same level. And in other cases, they teach their peers, right? And of course, who can deny that technology is also a way of providing them with information that may lead to learning? So, what do you think this intervention of sustained practice and coming to the language consciously has? High, medium, or low? Scaffolding is one of the highest ranked activities. The scaffolding comes from the environment, right? Implications. There. Do you know what to teach with oomph is? Right? Teach with oomph. Well, we teach with oomph, which is a different thing. My student teachers tended to replicate their classroom practice, and it's basically teach the grammar. This is the simple present. This is how you make a sentence. Teaching with oomph means guiding the students to discover when the language is used, what the meaning is, how it is pronounced, and then the last thing you do is the form. Because if you walk the students through these all the big questions they have are answered. Many students don't speak because they are afraid of making pronunciation mistakes and being laughed at, right? And for that, use multimodality and implement diverse approaches. Again, awareness raising. Experiment. This has to do with practice. Practice makes? You know that's wrong. Practice only makes things permanent. But only perfect practice may make perfect permanent. So, sustained practice. Do you think it has an effect? Look at this. 0.79, almost twice as much as a normal one. What are the implications? In our context, this is how we have structured practice. We start with imitation, substitution, manipulation, personalization, reconstruction, and then communication. So we make sure that according to our students' needs, we give them the kind of practice that they actually are craving for, right? And we use Adrian Underhill and Scrivener's concept of 3 times practice. Are you familiar with it? Or demand high teaching, which is basically when you correct an activity, the first time is as is, then you ask the students to turn their page around and you ask them questions that force their memory and personalization. And the last one is 10. Students need F times 4. And I'm taking 1 more minute. I know it's time. 1 more minute, can I? They need frequent and focused formative feedback. Talking about alliteration, right? And I want to bring a quotation from a Portuguese colleague, Paula Danaghi. I don't know if you know her. Yeah. This is the best definition I've ever heard of what feedback is. Feedback is the reward that the students expect for doing the work we assign them. Isn't that beautiful? So, in your feedback, be positive and be objective. Feedback, you guys, 0.70, imagine that. Huge impact, huge effect size. Implications. This is how we do feedback. We have a script. The first, and of course we don't do it for every student, we do it for the students who need it the most. Take them aside, okay? If I don't understand something of what you did, I ask you questions, I clarify. The second thing that makes all the difference is to tell the student everything they've done well. And they get surprised because they are expecting us to tell them what they do wrong. Then we ask them to reflect on what is wrong and we help them come up with 2 or 3 things that they can change and empower. So, some takeaways. Looking into the future and across the ocean. Teach with curiosity in mind. This is something we've learned. Move from method to framework. Engage with students' communicative needs. Think multimodally. Plan for sustained, deliberate practice. Don't forget that. Scaffold to support encounters with new learning. And provide feedback that fuels learning because it's what keeps students moving forward. So, we started talking today about the need for a miracle. I think that if we include these ideas in our teaching and make them our own, I'm not saying copy what I do, we will all be surprised because o galo cantará novamente. Obrigado pelo convite e por ouvirem. Here is the list of references, and if you click on the QR code, you can have access to the full presentation. There might be one slide that is slightly different because after dinner last night I went back to the hotel and I changed something else. But thank you very much.